What's going on, my planting people? My name is Lithius and welcome to Roots Ready. In today's video we are going to be looking at my top 5 favorite plants for the month of September. Strap in because this one is going to be an exciting one. We're going to start right here with this plant, none other than my STEPHANIA nova. This thing for the first time has given me the biggest leaf that it has ever given me in the 3 to 4 years that I've had this plant. Look at this thing. I measured it today and it is end to end 20 centimeters long. That's how wide this thing is. This thing is absolutely crazy. Usually this plant will produce leaves around this size. I think I've had it just a little bit bigger in the past, but by far and by a massive margin, this leaf right here is the biggest. I'm not sure why it grew with this little notch down here. This is not from any damage or anything like that. The plant just decided to grow that way. I'm not sure why. I certainly am a sucker for these dinner plate, very circular, very symmetrical leaves. But when you have something this glorious, something that is able to catch your eye like this, I don't think you can complain too much, honestly, because just this thing is crazy. I'm not sure if the leaf is still growing, if it's still hardening. These leaves tend to be quite soft anyway. I don't know how to describe it. It's kind of like if you were to boil some cabbage, that sort of texture, very, very soft, like very delicate. I think you have to be very careful with this because it is prone to damage and breaking if you are a bit too rough and manhandle this a little bit too much. You also have to be careful because these stems aren't very strong either, so it all grows out of these little tubers, these little bulbs, and yeah, it's just literally connected by a very thin stem, something again that could break quite easily. This is a plant I purchased about a couple of months after I purchased my other STEPHANIA. I purchased it because I thought it was so interesting and it's something that I really wanted, and I did that before doing any research on this plant. Now you have to be really careful if you are purchasing a plant like this, because these plants for a long time were being poached from the wild. I must admit, I think this may be one of those. I did buy this from an Etsy seller. They were meant to have really good reviews. I did pay quite a bit of money for it. I didn't do my due diligence. I'm not sure if those people got it from an ethical source. I'm not sure, but I would say don't rush out and buy this plant. If you are, make sure you do your research and try your best not to contribute to these plants being poached from the wild. The last thing we want to do is bring plants into our collection, into our homes, by taking them out of the wild where they're supposed to be, and really disrupting an ecosystem that we don't know. These plants come from halfway around the world, and we want to make sure that the places that we're buying our plants from are sustainable and we're not doing any damage or any harm. But still, I want to celebrate this plant because it is one that I have in my collection, and I just wanted to share it with you guys and just celebrate how incredible of a plant it is and how nicely this plant is growing for me. I still have this plant growing in pond in a semi-hydro mix. It is super well rooted and there's lots of water in there. I can see some new roots growing. I think this plant is probably preparing to go into its dormancy in the winter. It certainly does. This one and my other STEPHANIA erecta, they definitely go into their dormancy. The other one's already starting to lose its leaves. This one grew this one at the last minute. I'm not sure why. It's like a second wind that it had, but I'm here for it. I'm here to celebrate it. So yeah, we'll just enjoy this whilst it lasts. They tend not to last that long, a couple of weeks at most, and then they fall off and then some new ones come in. But yeah, we'll celebrate this one whilst we have it, the STEPHANIA nova. Next up is this beast of a plant. This is my ANTHURIUM PELTIGERUM. Look at the size of these leaves. I mean, oh my days, this thing is crazy. So this was the leaf that came out before, and this right here is the latest leaf. Now we're gonna measure it to see what sort of size these leaves are. Okay, so I've just measured these, and this leaf, which is the one that came out just before, is 31 centimeters, and this one over here is 33. And I want to say that this plant is still hardening off, because you can see that it is certainly, it's got that little bit of a lime green color to it. So that's an indication that it's still got a little bit of growing to do. So maybe half a centimeter if I'm lucky. So this thing might just touch 34 centimeters. But I mean, damn, these leaves are so impressive. this plant did have another big leaf that it grew, and I'm not sure if it was bigger than these ones or around the same size. I think it was bigger than this one because this is the leaf before the last. The other leaf came in, it hardened off, and then for whatever reason it just started to decline and it died and it fell off, and it then grew this one in its place. So I can't be too mad at that. The plant is, I think that did happen after I did a repot of this plant. So yeah, these things kind of happen, but come on. I mean, look at this. This thing is absolutely insane. I can't believe that when I purchased this plant, I think this was the first leaf on the plant. This little thing has now grown up and is this. Look at the size. This thing is absolutely bigger than my head, and I cannot wait for this plant to grow and to flourish and to really come into its own. As I said, I did do a repot on this plant. I was a little bit nervous. The plant was in a cup and it was in there for a long time, and it grew some of its biggest leaves in that cup, and I thought, you know what, it's high time that this plant gets repotted into a much larger pot so that it can actually sustain these leaves and it can have the space to grow, to continue to produce even bigger leaves. So I did that, and in hindsight I really shouldn't have tried to tease the roots. It was already growing in pond. I should have just taken it out and plopped it in, but for whatever reason I wanted to sort of spread the roots out and do all this stuff. I should have just stuck it in, and maybe I wouldn't have lost that other leaf. So that's a lesson learned. Sometimes it's not worth it. There is an account that I've seen on Instagram, I think Plant Russo or something like that. He has some incredible Veitchii and Queen Anthuriums and some really incredible plants. And I've seen him do some repots where he just refuses to detangle the roots. He just repots it into some fresh soil, and the roots will find a way. That's what they do. That's literally what they do. So that's a lesson that I've learned, to stop babying these plants. Stop babying these plants and just let them be, and they will find a way. They found a way in nature without our help, our interventions. So we should be able to replicate that as well in our homes as closely as possible. But anyway, I think we have the plant settled now because it has produced this new leaf, and I can't see that it's producing another leaf anytime soon. We do have the little sort of bud here, this little green thing just here. This is what produces the new leaf, so that one's coming already. It takes a little while for that to mature and then to produce a new leaf, so we'll see when that is. This plant isn't a particularly fast grower. I probably get a leaf every 2 months or so, so I'm not expecting anything probably for the rest of this year. We're going into the winter now, or into autumn or the fall, so that probably tells me that the plant is going to really slow down. So I may get a leaf every 3 months or even every 4 months, or maybe the next leaf will come in the spring. I hope it doesn't take that long. But for now, this plant is living in my grow tent where the average humidity is around 70% during the day, and in the evening it increases as well as the lights turn off. But I am thinking, because this plant is growing so quickly, that I may need to pull it out of the greenhouse and have it here in my collection. I'm hoping that this plant produces no more leaves for the rest of this year, and that way it can stay in here for now, because it's literally hitting the top and we can't possibly have another leaf grow from this. So I think I may have to look at slowly transitioning this thing out, and I'm thinking if I'm going to do that, I've either got to do it now whilst the weather isn't super cold, so that the plant can sort of prepare itself for that, or I just wait. I just wait and hope that it doesn't produce any leaves, and then it can sort of stay in there, and I can start that journey in the spring of 2025. But we'll take care of that as we get to it. But wouldn't that be amazing to have this plant here, just front and center, so everyone can enjoy it, so I can enjoy it without having to open up my greenhouse every time. But yes, this is the Anthurium PELTIGERUM, just an incredible plant, a beauty. And yeah, just something that every time it produces a new leaf, I'm gonna have to come here and share it with you guys. Look at that. Wow. This right here is my Anthurium WENDLINGERI, and this thing is growing very nicely. I got this as, was it even a seedling? I think I got this as a seed, and I've grown it to what it is now. And I got that this year from an international seller. I can't quite remember where, but I purchased this because this plant in the UK was very hard to come by Honestly, you couldn't find it anywhere. And then since I bought this one, I've now seen it come on the market in a big way, and you can actually buy it as a much more developed plant, like a proper seedling with roots and lots of leaves. But anyway, I'm going to enjoy this because I can actually say that I've grown this thing from a seedling, and I want to get this thing to grow to a giant. I want it to become really big and mature, and I want to be able to take all of the credit for it. But anyway, the reason why I'm talking about this plant today is because we have a new leaf, and it's finally giving me that Wendy vibe. Look at this leaf. So that is really, really good. I'm really happy to see that. A lot of the other leaves before were very small, very tiny. You know, we started to get some elongation over here, and this one, this leaf, for whatever reason, I don't know if you can see it here, but right here there's a little stub. It started to grow a leaf, and it didn't even get to a centimeter. It was very, very tiny, just a little tiny leaf, and it just yellowed and it fell off. So that was a bit of a shame. So I was a bit worried. I don't know if it was something to do with my watering schedule. Not sure. I haven't changed anything dramatically about this. I do think that there was a little bit of a spider mite outbreak. So I think this plant, when it produced that leaf, was attacked by spider mites. But as you can see, I've been able to sort that out, and the leaf that came afterwards is lovely and lush and pristine. Not even a little bit of damage. I have the recipe for spider mites now. I'm doing a bit of an experiment with something new to test whether spider mites, if I can get rid of it once and for all. It's looking good so far. There's a lot of good signs there that it's working. So that's a video to come. So if you want to deal with spider mites, or you want to find a way to get rid of them, I've got something for you. So stay tuned for that. And this is one of the case studies or the testaments that it actually works, because we're able to produce a lovely, lovely leaf. So keep this in mind, this plant, what it's looking like today, because I'm going to keep doing an update on this, and then we're going to follow the journey of this Anthurium Wendy from being a seedling to what it is today and what it is going to be in the future. Next up, this is probably one of my newest plants. I'm trying to think if I've had any other plants in the past couple of months. So this is probably one of them. Actually, no, there is another, but this is one of the 3 newest plants I have in my collection, and I want to give you an update. This, ladies and gentlemen, is my recently purchased Anthurium Delta Force. When I got this plant, it only had these 2 leaves on it, and when I actually purchased it online, the photos on there were of 1 leaf seedlings. These are all tissue cultured plants from the Eden Lab, a great place if you want to get some really good plants for really good prices, because they do a lot of their stuff through tissue culture, which means that you can kind of see what your plant is going to grow up to be, because it's going to be an exact replica, an exact clone of that plant. So I've seen what that main plant is going to look like, and it's going to look absolutely stunning. This was a bit of a risky purchase. It was a bit pricey. It's the most I've paid for a plant in a long time, but I'm glad that I did, because I was nervous that I'll buy it and it wouldn't do well. But man, I've proved myself wrong, because it has already produced this leaf, and it's already showing some good sizing up potential. So you can already see this leaf is a lot bigger than the leaf that came before. So I can only imagine that the next leaf is gonna likewise jump in size, and I think we'll get to something like the main mother plant very, very soon. If summer could be extended for a little bit longer, I reckon in a couple of months, maybe with the right temperature, the right weather, you can really get some good growth out of this. But as we're coming to the end of summer, where I am in the UK, and entering autumn, I do think that this may slow down. So I think I might get another leaf or 2 before the end of this year. But also, before I did this video, I took a look, and I can see signs just down here where my finger is. That little thing between these 2 petioles here looks to me like a new leaf. So already this thing is getting to work on its 2nd leaf for me in my collection, and its 4th leaf in total. So watch this space. This thing is gonna come, and it's gonna come in such a big way. I'm super excited, and I can't wait to keep you guys updated on this plant, the Anthurium Delta Force. I spoke about this plant maybe about a month ago. I'm sure it wasn't that long ago, and I'm already back with an update. I cannot believe it. But it's none other than the Queen Anthurium. Look at this leaf. Isn't that impressive? If I remember correctly, this is a 33 centimeter leaf. How impressive is that? No, this is the leaf that I showed you last month. The last time I spoke about this plant, this is the leaf that I showed you. This is the new leaf. Oh my goodness. This thing is 45 centimeters. 45 centimeters versus the 33 centimeters that the previous leaf produced. What a jump. What an absolute jump. When I showed you this leaf last time, I told you it was still hardening off. It was a bit yellow, not yellow, but like a bit lime green. And it still had some hardening off to do. So it grew maybe just a little bit more. It's the same story with this. This thing is still soft. It's still growing. So it's 45 centimeters now. By the time this thing hardens off in maybe a week or two, it may be a centimeter more. It may be a little bit longer. And not only is this plant getting longer, I am so in love with the shape of it. It's growing. It's not as thick as this one. This one was quite wide bodied around this bit, around the shoulders here. So just underneath the lobes is quite wide bodied. And also the lobes weren't very separated. They weren't very pronounced. It was sort of, they're overlapping, especially if you look at it from the back. They certainly are overlapping. But this one came in in its own way. This one said, forget about the status quo. I'm going to do things the way I would do it. It's still not the very slender, very slim Queen Anthurium that I certainly am a massive, massive fan of. It's still quite thick, but it is getting a bit more proportioned. And these lobes, although they're not quite separated, there's definitely more of a gap here than there is on the other ones. Even the one before just here, again, not much of a gap there. This one had a slight gap. You can see that, so that looks really good. And the others, again, is a complete melting pot of flavors here, of different types of Anthurium shapes and sizes and designs. So I think this is going to be a plant that keeps me on my toes. I just never know what is going to come out with next. But look at that, man. Oh my goodness. The thing that I have to do on this plant, and I think I will try to do it today. I'm not sure if I'm going to have enough time to do that today, but if not this weekend, certainly next, is I need to sort out this moss pole. Now this is my lazy moss pole with a water bottle, but the plant has now grown beyond it. So you can see there's the lid, there it is there. I need to extend this, so I need to figure out a way to do that. I'm not quite sure how to do it yet. I may have to cut this and add a new one. I'm not sure, but I need to sort that out. And also, just like the Anthurium PELTIGERUM that I spoke about in the beginning or earlier in this video, this plant is also living in my grow tent, which is, this one is actually hitting the top of the next shelf, and I will need to remove this plant. If this plant decides to grow another leaf, it's gonna have to come out. And again, I want to make sure that that transition from that nice, lovely, warm, high humid environment, I want to make sure that that transition into this space, which is a lot harsher, which is averaging 50% humidity, as you can see down here, and already, you know, 20 degrees Celsius. What's that in Fahrenheit? I'm not too sure. I'll put it on the screen. You know, this is not optimal. When I compare it to my reading inside of the grow tent, this is 71%. And it's open at the moment, so it's probably closer to maybe 75, 76 thereabout. It is a bit colder in this, 19 degrees Celsius, so it's a little bit cooler in there, 1 degree cooler than it is out here. It's a little bit warmer out here. I do think as we get deeper into winter, it's gonna get colder here. It's right next to a door. I think we're gonna have to consider all of those things going forward. But yeah, we'll just keep an eye on everything. And I'm going to really think about how I do this transition. Another thing I'm considering is if I do actually have to go ahead and take this thing out of the grow tent, is I'm going to have to change out the pot as well. Because at the moment it's in terracotta, which is great, you know, because this plant, I don't want it to hold on to too much water and to too much moisture. But at the same time, because the humidity is going to be slightly lower, I need to supplement that ambient humidity for a bit more humidity in the roots, because the plant is going to be using more. So that's something I'm going to have to think about. but again, you know, it's getting colder. You don't want the roots to stay wet for too long. It's this whole balancing act when you've got plants. You've got to find that right balance. You can have plants growing in lower humidity, but you need to make sure that the soil has the right amount of moisture in it to offset that lower ambient humidity level. It's all a game. It's all a game of chess, how you play this. So I'm gonna have to really think about how I do that and try to transition it out as soon as possible. I hope you enjoyed this final plant as much as I do, because oh my goodness, it is just glorious. It's an amazing plant, and certainly deserves its common name of Queen Anthurium, because look at this thing. Absolutely royal and regal. Look at it, the Anthurium warwickerianum. Wow. Those are my top 5 plants this month. Let me know what your favorite plants are at the moment. And if you're like me, you're getting ready and you're preparing yourself and your plants for that transition from summer to fall, let me know what steps you're taking to ensure that your plants transition seamlessly. I'm still learning, and I'm sure as a community we're learning. So please share your experience in the comments below so we can all learn from each other. We can all grow together. But that's everything. Thank you so much for watching, and as always, keep planting.